Now, many of you who struggle with digestive issues may be familiar with a type of diet called the low-FODMAP diet. And the low-FODMAP diet has gained a lot of popularity in recent years as a way to manage symptoms from irritable bowel syndrome. FODMAPs is actually an acronym for types of carbohydrates in foods that tend to kind of disrupt people's digestive system if they're struggling with irritable bowel syndrome. These types of carbohydrates can actually ferment in our digestive system, creating symptoms like gas or bloating or abdominal pain. So the low FODMAP diet really consists of avoiding or greatly limiting these types of foods from our diet in the hopes to alleviate some of those symptoms that are really common with irritable bowel syndrome. Now, before we dig into the whole rest of the video, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Marcy Vasky. I'm a functional medicine nutritionist working with Oswald Digestive Clinic. So I see a lot of individuals who do struggle with bloating or gas or diarrhea or constipation. And sometimes putting them on that low FODMAP diet that we're talking about today can be beneficial. Now, if you or someone you know needs some support with their gut health, I'm going to link our website down below where you can easily make an initial appointment. But of course, I'm always going to give you that free guide as well, because sometimes it's nice just to learn more about the gut. So down below will be our link to the 5 ways to improve your gut health. So now let's dig back into our topic, which is exploring low FODMAP dairy options. Low FODMAPs are types of carbohydrates that end up fermenting in the gut and causing more of that bloating or gas or abdominal pain. And so one of the types of carbohydrates to eliminate is oftentimes dairy. Now, of course, outside of dairy, there's other kind of carbohydrates that we need to be aware of as well that have high FODMAPs in them, like wheat or onions or garlic, those dairy products, and fruits like pears and apples are going to be high FODMAPs. And as well, there are vegetables. So it's a laundry list of foods to look and see, to eliminate from your diet, and to see as you eliminate those, putting them back in after 6 weeks or so to see if you're sensitive to them or how your gut is really reacting. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, why do some of these FODMAP foods cause so much pain or distension or uncomfortable symptoms? And the reason for that is those FODMAP carbohydrates are actually digested really poorly in our small intestine. And so they make their way to our large intestine where they end up fermenting and then giving you all of those symptoms. Now, I chose dairy as a type of FODMAP to highlight today because after working with so many individuals over the years, dairy is something that is really hard for people to let go of, even if it gives them symptoms. And one of the reasons is that it's hard to find substitutions. So today we are going to dig into if you need to explore that low FODMAP diet to help relieve you of your symptoms, what are some dairy substitutes or dairy options that you can try? Now, before we get to those options, I want to explain, how does dairy actually trigger the gut? And what happens is that individuals who lack an enzyme, which is called lactase, without that, you're unable to break down the lactose that's in dairy, which leads to what's commonly known as lactose intolerant and gives you those symptoms of bloating or gas or just uncomfortable stomach. And in addition to the lactose that dairy has in it, it also has another carbohydrate called galactose. And so those two carbohydrates are creating some more of that fermentating and some of those symptoms that you might be feeling. All right, so enough about the science with all of that. Let's dig into what are some options if you're going to take out dairy from your diet. Now, as I said, taking dairy out is really challenging for a lot of people, but there are some options. So the first one we're going to chat about is lactose-free dairy products. Now, these lactose-free dairy products are really good for individuals who are only lactose intolerant. what they do is they put the enzyme lactase in the milk product, which helps break down the lactose that's in the dairy. And so when you consume it, your belly doesn't have such a hard time with it. However, like I mentioned, dairy also has another carbohydrate, which is called galactose in it. So while you might be just lactose intolerant, and that's great, and that these dairy-free or these lactose-free dairy products will work for you, if you have a galactose issue going on, you're still going to have symptoms on these products. And so if you are finding that you're lactose intolerant and maybe having an issue with the galactose, you're going to want to stay away from dairy products in general. And so you might be thinking, well, what are some milk alternatives? And you've seen them out there. If you struggle with digestive issues, you probably have one in your refrigerator right now. But a lot of those alternative milk options are pretty good. And what I would say is stick to more of the nut-based milk, so like almond milk, coconut milk, and macadamia milk. Those three are going to be really good, and because they're nut-based, they'll be a little higher in protein as well. And of course, when choosing any kind of milk alternative, you want to make sure it's unsweetened because, as you know, we don't want any more sugar in our diet than we might get. And so picking out a sweetened or flavored milk is just going to add more sugar to your diet. Now, if you're looking for something kind of creamy to take the place of your regular yogurt, there are lots of different alternative yogurts on the market. And again, I would stick to more of the nut-based yogurts, so almond yogurt, coconut yogurt, macadamia yogurt. My very favorite one is cocoa yogurt, and it's delicious, it's creamy. Just make sure, again, that you get the plain flavor. Don't put vanilla or get vanilla in it or any kind of fruits in it, because again, that just adds more sugar to your overall diet, which you really don't need. And so getting that plain yogurt, you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck. And one thing you can do with your plain yogurt, if you're kind of like, ooh, I don't know if I like the taste of that so much, because it is pretty, I don't know if it's bland, but it's kind of tart. Sometimes people might say bitter. So occasionally what I do for a treat is that I'll take my coconut yogurt and I'll put in a little bit of protein powder that's vanilla flavored. And it's a nice it's almost like pudding. So it's super yummy and another good alternative to keeping away from dairy. And I think one of the hardest things for people who take dairy out of their diet is a substitution for cheese. I have to say that I've tried a lot of cheeses over the years and I haven't loved any, but that doesn't mean that there's not new stuff always being produced and made that's on the market now. But some of those things that you can start looking for is what I talked about earlier when I was talking about lactose-free dairies. So you can find lactose-free dairy cheese. And again, if you're only lactose intolerant, that should be no problem. Now, other people do find that their stomachs feel pretty good on feta cheese or sheep's cheese or even goat cheese. But oftentimes it's in a small amount, and it doesn't mean you can't try it. But just kind of being aware that it might not be perfect. And so if you're really going to be digging into doing the FODMAP diet for the 6 weeks that's really you're supposed to be on it or that you shouldn't be on it any longer, and to give you the most benefit, for 6 weeks, if you can even just stay away from all dairy, that's going to be a way to go. But if you start introducing things at the end of that 6 weeks and you just really find that dairy is not your best friend, then you're going to want to find some of these more long-term alternatives. Now, one thing that when we take dairy out of our diet, it seems that we use dairy a lot for snacks. And so what are some snacks that you could maybe replace that with? And one option might be doing like a rice cake with some almond butter and maybe just a few banana slices, which gives you some carbohydrate there, some healthy fats, a little bit of protein in the almond butter, and then of course that sweetness with the banana. And you can always sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon on there. So that's a nice alternative and easy. It's portable, which is hard to find snacks that are portable when we lead busy lives. Now, another option would be, this is maybe a little bit more intense, but making those crunchy kale chips, where you can just take the kale, drizzle some olive oil on it, crisp them in your oven, and then get some macadamia cream cheese dip, which is a nice alternative. And you can dip and have something creamy and something crunchy at the same time. Now, of course, one of the ones I already talked about was, getting that dairy-free yogurt and putting a little bit of protein powder in that. But in addition to that, you could also throw on a few berries, maybe some nuts for some crunch. And again, that's a nice, easy, portable snack that we can eat and get a lot of wonderful nutrition from. Now, after telling you all about these dairy-free products that might be good substitutes for taking dairy out and trying to find something that's similar, one thing to always remember is to read the ingredients. Now, sometimes it might just say like coconut yogurt, but what's all in that coconut yogurt or almond yogurt or the cheeses that you pick up? You want to make sure that you understand all the words in the ingredients, because then they're going to be whole, real foods that you can digest well. I think the one big thing to realize if you enter into the low FODMAP diet is that everybody is individual, meaning that some FODMAPs are going to be more irritating to somebody's sensitive stomach than the others. And so what it's best to do is keep a journal and pay attention to what your body is telling you. That way you can really find, oh yeah, those are definitely my trigger foods, or something, maybe, another one that seems like it would be a trigger food for many isn't for you. And that way you can make your diet more cohesive, and also you don't feel so restrictive. So I think that, the low FODMAP diet is going to be something to help alleviate symptoms, of course, and that's why we are seeing it more and more, and you see it popping up on your Google or, on your YouTube streams. But the thing to remember is the low FODMAP diet is there to relieve symptoms, not as a long-term diet. And I think that's something really important to remember, because you don't want to do the low FODMAP diet as you eliminate a lot of foods. And that doesn't mean that just because you don't have symptoms that your gut is healed. That gives it space for you to heal the gut when things are less inflamed. So just as you encounter the low FODMAP diet, or you start thinking about, well, maybe I want to do this, just know that there's a lot of alternatives. And while you're taking out some of those FODMAPs, do the healing that your gut needs. Thanks for joining us today.